Crash or revival? What Donald Trump's presidency will bring and to whom? With us is Uriel Epstein, Executive Director of the Renew Democracy Initiative. Uriel, hello, good to see you. Let's start today with a quick poll. Risks or opportunities? What do you see in Donald Trump's presidency?
Риски или возможности? Что вы видите сейчас в президентстве и приходе Дональда Трампа? Кратко пока что.
So far, most of what I see are risks. Yes, opportunities can certainly arise as well, but he as a person is completely unpredictable. But look, we can only judge him on what he said he was going to do. If the best situation is that he doesn't deliver on his promises, we understand that's not the most encouraging prospect.
То, как мы понимаем, это не очень приятная ситуация. Значит, какие тут начнем?
Let's start with the risks and end on a positive note. What are the risks? First, there are huge risks here for our American allies, because we know that Donald Trump has little respect for the other leaders of the free world. He has said many times that he does not see the point of NATO, does not understand the importance of working with Europe, and believes that we are not paid enough to protect others. He looks at the world like a mafia don. If he doesn't get paid, he doesn't defend. This is even evident in his attitude toward Taiwan. Well, Taiwan doesn't pay us. Why should we protect them from China? The biggest risk is a worldview that instills some fear. Our allies may lose confidence in us, and our adversaries will not fear us, realizing they can manipulate Trump by praising his intelligence and outstanding qualities.
Наши союзники не могут нам доверять. И с другой стороны, есть и возможность, что наши соперники, наши враги не будут нас бояться. Потому что они будут понимать, что вот они могут манипулировать Трампом, они могут говорить ему, какой он хороший, какой он умный, какой он прекрасный, и спасибо этому вот он может быть более к этому открытым. Вот последний раз, что я у вас был,
For example, we discussed TikTok, how Trump changed his position 180 degrees. First, he sought to ban the platform when he was president, and then when Congress finally acted to ban it, Trump suddenly said, "No, it's not necessary. I'm not against TikTok." Thus, we can assume that TikTok will never be banned in the U.S., given that Trump controls the White House and Republicans are likely to control both the Senate and the House of Representatives. This suggests that, in all likelihood, TikTok will remain in its position. I see this in a more global context. Perhaps Trump will start flirting with our enemies to some extent. But on the other hand, there are also certain opportunities. First, Europe must realize the need to take leadership.
Значит, тут возможности тоже есть. Первое, Европа должна понять, что они должны взять на себя лидерство. И я уже вот слышал, как Макрон встречался с Олаф Шольцем.
Already we are hearing that Macron is meeting with Scholz, and perhaps European leaders are beginning to realize that America will probably not be the leader of the free world for the next 4 years. This means that Europe must take that leadership and may finally be realizing it.
И мы должны помнить, что у Европы немало способностей, у них много денег, у них неплохая технология, у них, может быть, нету такой военной техники, как у нас, но они могут это выработать.
Europe has considerable opportunities. They have enough finances, good technology. Yes, they may not have the military potential that we have, but they can develop it. If they get motivated, it will be an opportunity. Secondly, we really don't know what Trump will do.
И это, конечно, тоже, само собой, проблематично, но, с другой стороны, на сегодняшний день это может быть и наш самый лучший шанс, что, возможно, он говорит публично, мол, что Украина должна отступать, что вот... Мол,
He often says one thing and does another, and while that in itself is problematic, it may be our best chance. He may say publicly that Ukraine should give in, that we should give something back to Putin, but in reality he may not do that, and may even put pressure on Russia. Moreover, there are rumors about the composition of his administration, and among them are traditional Republicans, Reagan supporters.
скажем, сложные, самые проблематичные риски.
Уриэль, хорошо, тогда продолжай еще пока так вот кратко. А Украина или Россия все-таки? Или что-то где-то между посередине, по-американски и по-трамповски?
If they gain influence in his administration, they might be able to stop the most dangerous decisions. All right, let's move on. Now, briefly, Ukraine or Russia or something in the middle. In American terms, probably something in the middle. With the Biden administration, we saw Jake Sullivan and others saying, Ukraine must win, giving you lip service, but not taking the necessary steps to actually help Ukraine win, fearing Russia and nuclear escalation. Donald Trump is unconventional and doesn't care about traditional norms, which could be either good or bad. On one hand, this may help, as he's not as fearful of Russia as others might be. On the other hand, he doesn't declare that Ukraine must win, instead suggesting concessions to Putin.
Советского Союза и все прочее. Но с другой стороны, мы, конечно, видим, что он этого не говорит. Он не говорит, что Украина должна выиграть. Наоборот, он говорит, что, мол, надо...
So, what do I think needs to be done? What are the next steps?
Значит, что я думаю будет? Что надо делать? Какие тут следующие шаги?
Everyone must immediately engage with Trump and his inner circle to explain that supporting Ukraine is in their self-interest, as a Putin victory poses a major risk to the world, America, Ukraine, and their business and political interests. It is also important for their reputation, so that they are not remembered as the ones who lost the free world. This is a key next step. Talk to them in a language they understand. Trump understands the language of the mob, of business, but not the language of principles, as he used to do with Democrats when discussing the principles of liberty.
И, значит, Трамп понимает язык мафии, он понимает язык бизнеса, он понимает вот такой язык, а не язык...
What is important to say here is that if Putin takes over Ukraine, everyone will see Trump as a weak leader, and no one will respect America. Moreover, if Putin seizes Ukraine, he will not stop there and will move on, which will negatively affect the interests of the United States and Trump's entourage.
Более того, если Путин возьмет Украину, то он не остановится там, он будет идти дальше, и это будет плохо для американских, для трамповских бизнес-интересов. Вот как надо с такими людьми говорить.
I hope this leads to some definite change. My last point is that perhaps what Trump and his team say publicly does not reflect his real intentions and actions. We need to act as if there is a chance of success, realizing that his words don't always have to be taken literally, without taking them as 100% intentions. Will China destroy or just contain?
Китай уничтожит или просто будет сдерживать?
Will it economically hit them rather than compete, or will it just deter them? No, he'll hold back. I think there's an English phrase that says he barks worse than he bites. Here, I don't know if it's a similar phrase in Russian, but he spoke very aggressively against China. Yes, when he was president, he said a lot of things, but in reality, he did relatively little. Yes, he tried to change things on trade wars, and things like that, but in the end, he didn't do it. Furthermore, he recently appeared in an interview with Joe Rogan and said that he respects Xi Jinping because he controls 1 billion people. This shows that there is a definite understanding between him and the Chinese leader.
И это показывает, что тут есть между ним и лидером в Китае, что тут не все разногласия, что они соглашаются, я думаю, в некоторых политических вещах, и это как раз и я вижу в этом риск. Значит, более того, я еще вижу другой риск в том, что...
Another thing is that not all of their differences are resolved. They may agree on some political issues, and I see that as a risk. Moreover, he recently said that Taiwan doesn't pay enough for us to defend it. And that raises the possibility that if China decides to go after Taiwan, America may not defend Taiwan. But on the other hand, there are also possibilities. Trump is publicly speaking. His rhetoric against China is very strong, and if he does what he says, it could be positive. The risk isn't war or destruction, but economic consequences, though opinions on this vary. Another concern is international security. Will we allow China to control Africa, pursue Taiwan, and dominate the Far East? The key will be his administration's makeup, which will reveal his direction.
Будем ли мы продолжать позволять Китаю контролировать Африку? Будем ли мы позволять Китаю идти против Тайваня? Будем ли мы позволять Китаю контролировать Дальний Восток? И вот тут это все такие большие вопросы. И увидим, опять же, кто Трамп будет нанимать на свою администрацию. Я думаю, что это нам даст какие-то намеки, в какую сторону он будет идти. Будет ли он просто отдавать...
Will he give a lot to China, or will he stand up to it? Another risk is that he will be willing to go to war with China, but I don't think that's a serious risk. I don't think there will be a direct clash between the U.S. and China. Will Trump succeed in making America great again in the next 4 years? Again, I don't think my opinion is a secret here. I and my organization do not support or go against any candidate. I'm skeptical about magic. No, I think the next 4 years are going to be very tough. They're going to be risky, and we're living in a whole new world today. Uriel, thanks for the summary at the beginning. Now let's go point by point. The world-famous singer and showman, for example, was very upset about Donald Trump's victory. To be more precise, she shared a photo of a cake with the inscription "Fuck Trump," which she baked especially for this occasion, and added a comment in terms of trying to understand why a convicted criminal, rapist, and bigot was elected to lead our country because he is good for the economy. Pavlo Klimkin, Ukraine's foreign minister and also a diplomat, basically responds not to her, but to our viewers. But in this way, why, yes, he says, showed the Democrats the middle finger. It's not exactly diplomatic, but basically, Americans are tired of such politically correct and neat elites. There has been a loss of contact with people, and the economy, illegal migration, and a sense of indifference to people has been left to their conscience. Do you agree with Pavlo Klimkin? And how would you answer Madonna's question? Why did he win? In short, like the Russian term HR, most Americans now see the Democratic Party as a kadrovic HR person. And here's the problem. I think Klimkin is absolutely right, and unfortunately I think he's right, and Democrats, well look, let's look historically. What happened to Trump? Why did Trump lose the last election? He lost them most because people thought he was wrong during the COVID. Then Biden got into office. They got the COVID wrong too, but in the opposite direction. Trump didn't take the pandemic seriously. Biden did the opposite. That was the cultural norm there. Culture changed. That if you don't wear a mask all the time, you're a bad person, you don't care about the elderly, about other people, and so on. Of course, then we found out later that the science didn't really support that. And people, I think, haven't forgotten. That's number one. They haven't forgotten what happened during the COVID. Then we saw those protests in 2021 when George Floyd was killed. And we saw those protests. But the problem is, it wasn't just protests, there was violence. Stores were being burned, streets were being burned. There was total chaos in the cities. And the Democrats didn't speak out against it enough. Let it happen, although they did stop it in some places. But unfortunately, not enough. That's item number 2. Now, item number 3 is economic. Inflation was quite high. Despite the fact that it went down last time, people have not felt it yet. And despite the fact that the economy is generally growing, you have to think about it psychologically. I look at my money, I have money in the market. It is growing because the market is growing. That's good. I see that I have more money in my account. That's great.
Пункт номер 3 это, конечно, экономический. Это то, что инфляция была достаточно высокой, несмотря на то, что инфляция понизилась последний год. Люди этого пока еще не почувствовали.
But how often do I look at the screen? Once a month at most, on the other hand. How often do I go to the store to buy eggs or milk? Once a week, minimum. Every time I go to buy groceries, I see that eggs have become 50% more expensive than they were a year or two ago. I can feel it, and psychologically, it has an impact. These 3 reasons have driven people away from the Democrats. Now, the 4th point that ties all the others together, and this point is the most important, information warfare. Republicans, the extreme right, are winning the information war today. They control what people see, what people think, what people hear. Elon Musk bought Twitter for almost $50 billion, and everybody at the time thought, oh, some stupid business. But nobody understood his purpose. His goal wasn't business. He wanted to buy propaganda for himself.
Республиканцам, экстрим правый, на сегодняшний день выигрывают напрочь информационную войну. Они контролируют то, что люди видят, то, что люди думают, то, что люди слышат. Илон Маск купил Twitter за почти $50 миллиардов. И все тогда думали, ой, какое-то дурацкое бизнесовое решение, это такая ошибка и так далее. Да, это никто не понял его цель. Его цель никогда не была бизнесовой. Он никогда не хотел зарабатывать никакие деньги с Твиттером. Он хотел купить для себя пропаганду.
He wanted to buy an information weapon for himself. Here's an information weapon. That's what he bought. And take along with him those who now control the podcasts, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Andrew Tate. I don't know if your viewers will know these names, but if they don't, I highly suggest everyone Google who these people are and listen to what they have to say. And you will hear such crazy things that it will be hard to believe it. But on the other hand, a lot of people believe it. The fact that normal people, centrists, don't have this kind of information infrastructure, it's just a huge risk. Here I will say this is my goal, the goal of my organization, Reduce Democracy Initiative. In the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, we're going to build an information structure from the political center. And to buy, really, almost just to buy people in America, in Europe, and so on, to promote Kremlin propaganda. That's what I find most disturbing, is that Tucker Carlson, for example, I don't think the Russians were paying him. I think he was doing it for free. Well, he wasn't being paid by the Russians. He was just making money there, somewhere online. But there was a very funny moment here.
Мы увидели, как Путин вкладывал несколько сотен миллионов долларов в то, чтобы покупать, правда, чуть ли не просто покупать людей в Америке, в Европе и так далее, чтобы они продвигали кремлевскую пропаганду. И вот что меня тут больше всего тревожит, то что Такер Карлсон, например, я не думаю, что русские ему платили, я думаю, что он это делал за бесплатно. Ему платили не русские, а просто он зарабатывал деньги там где-либо онлайн. Но тут был очень смешной, забавный момент. После того, как Такер Карлсон пошел в Москву, и вот он...
After Tucker Carlson went to Moscow, was in supermarkets, interviewed Putin, and so on, he was just pure Russian propaganda promoting. So we found recently that the Russians were saying among themselves that they couldn't promote too much of what Tucker Carlson was doing because it's too obvious that it's propaganda, that people wouldn't believe it. It seems like they were wrong. It looks like that's exactly what people believe. So from my perspective, those are the 4 key reasons why Trump won, why the Democrats lost, and why we live in a very different world today. The key is for Democrats to reflect and act, with both political technologists and politicians understanding how to improve in the next 4 years and find consensus with voters and the international community.
положение и найти этот общий язык и консенсус и с избирателем, и с международным сообществом.
We've mentioned risks from those around Trump, like Elon Musk, who participated in a call between Trump and Zelensky. However, strong figures like Mike Pompeo, who favor radical solutions, could be a threat to dictators. What do we know about potential appointments in Trump's circle and how they'll influence his domestic? And foreign policies. Trump is 78 years old. I don't think he'll work more than a few hours a day. Most of the time he'll be sitting around watching TV, tweeting something, playing golf. That's what he will do. And the country will be ruled by those around him. And so that means those around him is the key issue. That's the most important thing, figuring out who those people are going to be. If it turns out to be Mike Pompeo or Mike Rogers or Vance, I don't know. Weird. But if it's going to be people like that, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's the best option because these people realize how dangerous dictators are and will fight against them. I really hope we see Mike Pompeo or someone like Rogers. But on the other hand, the fact that Elon Musk was on the call with your president is very disturbing to me because we can see that he deeply doesn't care about the free world and is willing to support dictators. What worries me most is that you depend on him. This is an unpleasant fact. Your army cannot operate effectively without his satellites, without Starlink. Where all this is going to lead is still unclear, because we see how often Elon Musk talks to Putin. The big question is what his vice president will do. We more or less know his position. He's against American leadership on the world stage, he doesn't believe in the free world, and that could lead to very negative consequences. If he gets more power in the administration, it will create a risk.
И это означает, что он может действовать очень негативно.
But as it is, we'll soon find out. If the power ends up in the hands of people like Mike Pompeo, Vance, or Rogers, I don't think the world will change that much, and America will continue to play the international leadership game.
То я думаю, что все-таки мы не увидим, что мир не настолько изменится, и Америка все-таки будет продолжать играть какую-то роль в международном лидерстве.
And if we see the likes of Carlson, Musk in power, then it's hard to predict what America's role will be.
То будет наоборот. И тогда мне очень тяжело предвидеть, какую роль Америка будет играть.
We won't be seeing Sullivan with you anymore. Yeah, that's it. We can forget about Sullivan. We can say he was, he is, so honest. He has 2 months left. That's what I don't understand. He has 2 months left now. He could do anything to help you, to strengthen some Ukrainian position, to strengthen the American role in the world. And I don't see him doing that. I remember I told you again last week or 2 weeks ago that I think there's a chance that Biden will do something in these 2 months. And I haven't heard anything from Biden on that. I haven't heard anything from Sullivan on that. We are doing everything we can to convince our current leaders that they have a month and a half, 2 months tops, to do what needs to be done to strengthen our position in the world. So far, I don't see them doing it. Uriel, we've talked to our experts, international experts, and we believe that this window of opportunity will not be utilized, not even Joe Biden's forte. It seems everything is already settled. There will be no long-range strikes, decisive actions, or response to DPRK troops. Maybe we're wrong, but I think not. What we'll see is the real Europe, Trump and his policies, and the role of others like Viktor Orban entering Mar-a-Lago wearing America the Greatest Again caps. Also a good question. Europe has very little time. It should immediately arm itself. It should immediately put all the money it can into defense and security.
Потому что они не могут. Я сейчас говорю кому-либо, кто в Европе сейчас слушает эту передачу, я с вами говорю, что
You can't count on America to protect you under Donald Trump. There's no guarantee. I've worked on these issues for 6 years and have never seen anything like this.
как раз над этими вопросами, и я никогда такого не видел. Тут нету никакой гарантии, что Америка там будет.
There is no guarantee that America will defend Europe. You are alone now. You cannot count on America to save you. This means that if Russia advances further, it will be your responsibility to respond. You have to do it now. You have to arm yourselves. You have to invest in your armies and defense, and you have to unite, because no single European country can match America.
Потому что никакая одна европейская страна не может сравниваться с Америкой.
But if you all unite, Germany, England, France, Italy, well, everybody, then yes, then you can compete with the United States.
Да, тогда вы можете конкурировать с Соединенными Штатами.
That's what I hope will happen in Europe. But again, it's unclear because we see that right now in Germany, it's absolute chaos. The government seems to be falling apart, and it's unclear who's going to win. And of course, if the extreme right-wing AfD wins in Germany, then it's absolutely hard to understand what's going to happen. And of course, a Trump win would probably motivate the extreme right in Europe, but we'll see. Because in England, there are normal centrist leaders. In France, Macron is more or less centrist. But on the other hand, according to the polls, he is very unpopular. Le Pen is much more popular at the moment. And it's not clear who can come after Macron. And so for the moment, Europe just has to realize that that's it. They're alone, and they're responsible not only for their own security, but perhaps for the security of the entire free world. The Telegraph tells us that one version of Trump's plan for Ukraine, of which there are already a myriad, calls for British and European troops to be stationed along the line of demarcation that will probably be created, and Ukraine must agree to postpone its ambitions to join NATO for 20 years.
Европейских войск по линии разграничения, которая, возможно, будет создана, и Украина должна согласиться отложить свои амбиции по вступлению в НАТО на 20 лет как минимум. И сразу два, у меня не 20 вопросов. А почему британские и европейские, а не американские? И
to postpone NATO membership. That could certainly be a verdict indeed by now. Or can we find some arguments to change Trump's mind on the NATO issue? Yes, Trump is, again, we can't believe what he says. Trump is a pure businessman and not a very outspoken businessman, which means that no, it's just for him. That starts from your first question, why not U.S. troops? Well, because Trump doesn't want to pay. Very simple. Why should we pay for it when someone else can pay for it? So it's very simple. And the second question, why do we have to wait 20 years? Again, nobody knows. So the first thing is that we have to realize that I am trying to be positive, that everything can change again in 4 years, even in 2 years. It's impossible to predict. So if people realize what they voted for, then maybe in 4 years we'll see an absolute upheaval like we saw in England. I remind people that in England there was once an election between Jeremy Corbyn, who was an extreme leftist, anti-Semite, communist, and Boris Johnson, who is, well, such a Trumpist. And so extreme left versus extreme right, and of course the right won, and that's not very surprising. And they won quite strongly, not like the Republicans won today, but even much stronger. And despite that, 6 years later, the center left is back, and they have power in England like they've never had before. So things can change very quickly. So these 20 years, one, we have to remember that it's just for now. And the second thing is, yes, I think it can be traded, that it can be changed. I think it's possible to maybe persuade people like Trump or those around him that without guarantees like NATO, Putin will only move forward, that you can never guarantee a halt to Putin's ambitions without something like NATO. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, I would advise you to focus on more concrete guarantees for today. Because again, the difference today between 20 years and 10 years with NATO, I think is not very big, frankly, because both of those are too far in the future. And what you need to focus on is literally the next 2 years, what you can advance here immediately. That means the more territory, the more weapons, the more defense, and don't think about more symbolic things like the promise of NATO in the future. And perhaps somehow see each other, or at least on the phone. But Trump doesn't call, even though he has already spoken to everyone in the world. He thinks that he is probably the one who will bend, although sitting at Valdai, he gave Trump nothing but compliments, sucking up to him wherever he could. Who needs this conversation and follow up more? At this point, Putin needs this conversation more. Trump has now entered the American government with unexpected power. He controls the entire American government, including our courts. So he has power to date that I don't think any president has had since World War II. That's true. Well, maybe Reagan had that kind of power, but overall, it's a very unique moment that a president has so much power. And so from that standpoint, I don't think at one second Trump needs Putin very much, but Putin does need Trump. And that's what I would say worries me most about this, is that Putin knows how to manipulate. I mean, Putin is a former Schnee. And of course, as he himself said, there's no such thing as a former Gbistnik. And he knows how to manipulate people. And I think he will be able to. There's a chance he will be able to manipulate Trump very successfully.
Он же думает, что это, наверное, он так прогнется, хотя, сидя на Валдае, он чего только каких комплиментов не насыпал Трампу, подлизывая ему где только можно. Кому больше нужен этот разговор и последующие действия?
На сию секунду этот разговор нужен больше Путину. Трамп вошел сейчас в американское правительство с неожиданной властью.
And he'll tell him how smart he is, how strong he is, how he's a genius, how he's absolutely vindicated now, and how he's won the whole thing, how he's, how he can suck it up. And then he'll be there. He'll be saying, come on, here we are, you and me. We're both strong men. We both understand everything. We both know everything. Come on, Donald. We'll have it between ourselves. Let's have it between men. Let's settle this matter, and that's it. And we'll be done. So, there. I wonder how Putin is going to approach this. And there's a chance that he will have some success. But there's still a chance that there won't be success. On the contrary, Trump will get angry, and oil prices will go up, and the sanctions will not go anywhere, because he also imposed them when he was in the first cadence in the White House. This option will also be painful for Putin. Yes, absolutely.
И потом он будет говорить, ну давай, вот мы с тобой, мы оба сильные мужчины, мы оба все понимаем, мы оба все знаем, вот давай, Дональд, мы это между собой, давай между мужчинами, ну давай, мы решим это дело и все.
There's this option too. Bibi Netanyahu and Putin and Trump were close friends, and then after the election, Netanyahu called Biden to congratulate him, and Trump was so angry that he didn't talk to him for a long time.
Цены на нефть пойдут путинские ко дну, и санкции никуда не денутся. Ведь он же также и вводил их, когда был при первой каденции в Белом доме. Этот вариант тоже будет, конечно, болезненным для Путина.
Trump, on the other hand, thinks like a 12-year-old boy. You have to think of Trump as a 12-year-old boy. You're going to say very affectionately how smart he is and so on, and he's going to do what you want him to do. And if he gets angry for any reason, and for cause or no cause, you can't predict what that boy will do.
Ты будешь очень ласково говорить, какой он умный и так далее, и он будет делать то, что ты хочешь.
Again, I'm being a little bit so humorous here, of course, but unfortunately, I think from a psychological standpoint, there's some ground here. Uriel, we have a lot of open scenarios. We hope these scenarios are as destructive for Putin and beneficial for us and the world. Thank you for your position and insightful comments. See you in a week. Uriel Epstein, Executive Director of the Democracy Initiative. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Спасибо, все взаимно. Uriel Эпштейн, исполнительный директор некоммерческой организации Renew Democracy Initiative, был вместе со мной, Ириной Узловой. Друзья, спасибо, что провели с нами это время. Оставляйте свои комментарии, уверена, что...
Leave your comments, give us likes, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have almost 8 million. Together, we are moving towards victory. Take care. We'll see you. We'll win.